Just when you think the top three are the top three, they all go and drop points in another bonkers round of Championship football. So starting off the roundup this week, and apologies it's a little bit later than usual as I was at Hull and I've had a lot of content to upload since I got home late that night. We start at Plymouth, who drew 2-2 against Bristol City. It's a good point in a way for both, but I think both could have done with a win at the same time. Of course, it's Plymouth's first game following the sacking of Wayne Rooney, something that I thought would happen, something that needed to happen in all honesty, and we'll see where they go from here. I think though, as I keep saying, they need to win their home games. I don't think points are going to be enough, and this follows a similar template to a lot of Plymouth home games this season. They get a point from it in a high-scoring game, and they get it in incredibly late circumstances. A 91st minute equaliser this time pulled them out of defeat and got them a point. So still, it just doesn't feel like enough for Plymouth. They need to win their home games to give themselves any form of a chance, and I think their next managerial appointment is absolutely huge. I'd personally, if I was them, probably look at someone like Ryan Lowe, but it's completely down to them which direction they go in. So it'll feel like a win because of how late the point has come, but they still need more in my opinion, and I think it'll be a real kick in the teeth for Bristol City. Just when they're knocking on the door and the playoffs are within reach, they go and drop 2 points at the team bottom of the league. But we did it. A lot of teams have done it, so they're not the only ones. But when you were leading going into stoppage time, I think they'll be bitterly disappointed with this one. QPR 3, Watford 1. A huge victory for QPR. These two are very strange teams. You've got two teams here who are currently, overall, really strong home sides, but let themselves down away. So this is kind of a predictable fixture, I guess you could say, because it's 4 straight home wins for Queen's Park Rangers now, and I guess as long as they keep winning as well as they are at home, they'll do well enough, although I still feel like they've got to improve a little bit on the road. But they're playing more than well enough, and it's another good victory for them. However, with Watford, well, their away form's always let them down for me this season. I've always said it's something they need to improve on, and it's back-to-back defeats for them now. I don't know if they're just starting to hit a bit of a blip. I mean, it's going to happen to every team in the league. It's their first time they've had back-to-back defeats since October, so I think for them it's important they don't let this extend into anything further and they get back to winning ways after this. It's also no wins in 5 for them. So Watford just need to get back on track, not lose too much ground, not panic. It's another good win for QPR though, who, as the weeks go by, I'm more and more convinced that they'll be absolutely okay. Millwall 0, Oxford 1. Another fantastic result for Oxford United, and, well, to all the people, all the sceptics around the Des Buckingham sacking, I guess we're all tasting a bit of humble pie at the moment with the brilliant start that has been made under Gary Rowett. Now, it could all be down to a new manager bounce. We'll have to wait and see how things transpire as the rest of the season continues, but I'm delighted for Oxford that they've turned their season around and got back on track. 3 wins in a row for them now. That little mini purple patch could be so important down at the bottom of the Championship, and to do it away from home as well is massive. That's something Oxford have not been able to do much this season, is win away from home and keep a clean sheet as well. It's 2 clean sheets in a row now, so Gary Rowett clearly doing what you'd expect him to do. He's gone in there, he's made them difficult to beat, and they're grinding out very important results. It looked like an evenish game. Millwall will probably be disappointed they didn't get something from it, and overall their form has fallen off a cliff as well. Only 1 win in 10 for Millwall at this point. They have, of course, just appointed Alex Neil, and I think it's an appointment they've needed. The timing is probably bang on. They need someone to come in and just get them stabilised a little bit and make sure they don't slip too further down the table. So a bit like what happened with Rowett at Oxford, they need Neil to go in there and hit the ground running. Burnley 0, Stoke 0. More drop points for Burnley. The top 3 are starting to falter, albeit I don't think Leeds are faltering as much, but Burnley and Sheffield United, I don't know what's going on at the moment. I mean, Burnley still aren't conceding goals, but they've stopped scoring. And that's always been something that's been in the back of my mind with Burnley, because they're such low chance creators. You know, they're bottom half for XG. They've overperformed their XG massively. It will level out. They continue to get results and find a way to win, which is very, very commendable. But I do always feel like, because they're such a low goal scoring and a low creative side, these results are always possible. And unfortunately, in the position they're in, games at home to Stoke are games they have to be winning with how tight and how crazy the pace is at the top of the Championship. So it simply is 2 huge points dropped for Burnley. Not a great red card either, with Hannibal getting sent off for not a really aggressive stamp, but a needless, unnecessary one that was just stupid, to be honest with you. I think it says a lot that out of the 18 shots that Burnley had, only 2 were on target. Stoke actually had more shots on target and almost as much XG, so a very good away performance by Stoke. But for them, it's an absolutely huge point. Burnley, 2 ginormous points dropped as they've drew 2 blanks in a row. Cardiff 1, Coventry 1. A good point for Cardiff City. I think they are starting to stop the rot. I will say that. I feel like after a really good interim spell for Omar Riza, the start really wasn't great. And although they're still not in a good position by any means at all, I think a good point at home to Coventry is a steady one, especially when they were down to 10 men for pretty much the whole of the second half. They'll be disappointed they couldn't hold on to the win, but I think given the man disadvantage, it'll feel like a better point for them than it was Coventry City, who did create more, had over double the XG. I guess it's a similar story to Coventry's season, really. They had 5 big chances in this game. They missed 4 of them. It's sort of what's been happening with Coventry. They're massive chance creators. They should be right up there, really. But they fail to take their chances once again, and the same habits are unfortunately still lingering around under Frank Lampard. I still think it's too early to judge him, but I'm not seeing either a massive drop-off or a ginormous improvement for Coventry under him as yet. We'll see what happens with Cardiff, though. I still feel like, even though this is a good point, they're still in a mad scrap for survival. Leeds 1, Blackburn 1. Now, even though Leeds have only lost 1 in their last 11, their overall form is still great. Blackburn have been now the first team to go to Elland Road and take anything from that ground since Burnley won there in mid-September. Leeds' ridiculous run of wins has come to an end, and in what dramatic circumstances. Like a lot of Leeds games this season, the better side, they banged on the door, they finally got a breakthrough on 88 minutes, and you think they've kept their home run going, they've done what the top teams do, they've found a way to win, etc., etc., and then 2 minutes later, Blackburn equalised from a set piece, from a scrappy corner. Danny Bart toe pokes it away and gets Blackburn a crucial point. I'll be honest, it's a snatch and grab. You know, they only created 4 shots, 2 on target. So, you know, like a lot of teams who've gone to Elland Road, they were under the cosh, they had far less possession, created less chances, but not many teams will come away from Leeds with anything this season, so it's a priceless point for Blackburn. Could be a priceless one in the race for the playoffs as well. I don't think Leeds will be too bothered by this. Yes, it's a giant suck-up blow, but it's a game they played well in, should have won in. I think they'll bounce back and they'll be just absolutely okay. These results can happen. Luton 0, Norwich 1. A really disappointing defeat for Luton, whose home form has been the most reliable side of their game of late. Everything positive that's come out of Luton has been their home form. Their away form has been the issue, so losing at home is massively disappointing for them, and it now means that their great home run is over and they've lost 4 of their last 5. And honestly, if Luton aren't careful, with teams below them making managerial changes, seeing slight improvements, they genuinely could get dragged into something pretty nasty that they'll want to be clear of before the end of the season. You know, anything can happen in them final few weeks. We saw that with Birmingham City last season, and Luton, although they've never been embroiled fully into the bottom 3, they've always been lingering just above it. There is quite a large possibility that if things don't get going, they will drop into there eventually. It's a worrying defeat for them, worrying form for them once again in a season that has just not got going and been a disaster. I mean, they edged this game, you could say, ever so slightly. Norwich took the chance when it came their way. It's their first away win in 10 for Norwich, so it's a priceless win for them. But for Luton, you've got to be worried if their home form starts dropping off, exactly like their away form, then they are going to be in huge trouble. Pompey 4, Swansea 0. A giant win for Pompey, who seemingly can't buy a win or a goal at a pretty hopeless away, but are absolutely smashing at Fratton Park. I'm not surprised. That's what I sort of expected from Pompey. Fratton Park to be a bit of a fortress for them, and that's what it is. They're unbeaten there in 5. They're scoring plenty of goals there. I think it's a good basis for them to build on if they can just improve their away form. There are more than enough signs there for me that Pompey will be okay. So a great Great win for them. Swansea, a disappointing one. Really, really disappointing. I think the stats show that it was probably a more even game than the scoreline suggested, and maybe 4-0 flatters Portsmouth and is a worse defeat than it looks for Swansea, but still, it isn't pretty, and there are rumours that Luke Williams might be leaving them and on his way to West Brom, which would be a huge blow for Swansea, because I feel like they were just on the verge of kicking on under him. They weren't, blowing anyone away, they weren't flying through the gears or doing anything all that spectacular, but I did feel like things were starting to really move in the right direction under him, and this might halt their progress pretty quickly if they do lose him, so it could be a really big loss for Swansea just when things were starting to look like they were ticking along quite nicely, so we've got to keep an eye on that one over the next few weeks. 3 defeats in 5 for Swansea. They need to hope that their gradual plough, challenge and run towards the top 6 hasn't faltered. Sheffield Wednesday 4, Derby 2. We cannot start this piece without talking about the Josh Windass goal from not just on the halfway line. He was miles in his own half. This was ridiculous. And anyone who says that this goal was overrated needs their head checking, because this was outstanding. I mean, from there, you sometimes see goals inside, players' own halves that the keeper's miles out. It bounces a few times. It trickles in. None of that with this. The goalkeeper wasn't even that far out. He's pinged it. It hasn't even touched the ground. It's flown right into the corner. It is an incredible strike. Incredible technique. What a goal, and might be goal of the season. I'd be surprised if anything can top that. It's an unbelievable strike from him. But it was a big win for Sheffield Wednesday, who were fairly clinical on the day, it has to be said. Derby created just as many chances as what they did, and I think Sheffield Wednesday still have to be wary of the chances they're giving up and the goals they've given up, because they have conceded 3 in their last 2, both against Boro and in the game following that, and they've conceded 2 again here. So I guess maybe a bit lucky that they were clinical and they happened to outscore Derby here. They'll still want to put a lid on the chances they're giving up, and Derby might feel a bit disappointed they just come up against a very clinical Sheffield Wednesday team here. It's probably the most I think I've seen Derby create on the road for a long time, so promising signs for them despite them having 6 defeats in their last 9. As for Sheffield Wednesday, it's a big win, and with goals going in like that, one you'd like to think they'd take huge confidence from. West Brom 3, Preston 1. West Brom are doing alright without Carlos Corberán. Their form is a little bit up, a little bit down, but it's getting them back into the top 6, and they're doing something that they weren't doing much at the start of the season, and that's win at home and score at home. They've went from drawing a lot to winning, losing, winning, losing. So for me and for West Brom, it's just about getting the next managerial appointment right, whether it is Luke Williams or someone else, and just getting back to being solid and consistent, because this up and down form might get them just inside the top 6, but if they want to establish themselves, a bit like with Boro, they need to be a little bit more consistent. But it's a great home win for them. Madge back in the goals. It feels like a long time since his initial burst at the start of the season. I'm not too worried about Preston. I feel like away from home they are a lot weaker than what they are at Deepdale, and they're going up against a team in the playoffs. So I think this is just a sign of, I think, where Preston are in the league at the moment, but I still think they'll be absolutely fine, and I'm interested to see where West Brom go from here. Hull 0, Boro 1. This was a game and a half, let me tell you. I've both reviewed it on the channel as always and uploaded a matchday vlog as I was there, and I saw it in the flesh, and wow, it was an unbelievable finish to the game. One of the best away ends, or if not the best away end I've ever been in. What a dramatic win for Boro right at the death. And finally, after all the points that Boro have thrown away, or found a way of throwing away this season, it was great to see us nick 2 at the death. And again, we absolutely deserved to win. The first half was pretty poor from both sides, but it was clear that Hull's attacking and offensive issues were there. The only way they looked like scoring was through an error from Boro, so we just had to ensure we defended well, which we did for the most part. And then it was just second half dominance, attack versus defence, and it would have been criminal, to be honest, if Boro hadn't come away with the victory. So we got what we deserved in the end. Massive, massive win, unbeaten in 5. And although there's a few draws in there that should never have been draws, it is unbeaten in 5, and we have posted back-to-back clean sheets, which I think is huge for our defence. As for Hull, they still need to sort out their attacking issues. I think January could be big for them. It's clear to see they're not that great going forward, so that might hinder them. I think they looked alright defensively, but they have been very inconsistent. They've won, they've lost, they've won, they've lost. So they need to find some consistency, but I still have a very good feeling that they'll be absolutely fine under Ruben Sellers. Finally, Sunderland 2, Sheffield United 1. The biggest win of the day was saved until last at the Stadium of Light as a ginormous clash between two of the top sides in the league was won by Sunderland. And a bit like Leeds the other day, it couldn't have been bigger. With all of the top three dropping points, this was probably Sunderland's biggest win of the season. And there's no surprise with their form at the Stadium of Light. It is keeping them in the fight. They are one of only two teams who remain unbeaten on home soil this season. And it was a great quick-fire 2-1 sort of game. Sheffield United missed a glorious chance with a missed penalty early on, which might have changed the game. But some poor Sheffield United defending led to the first, which is something you don't see all that often. And Sunderland reacted really well to the equaliser by going straight up the other end near enough and scoring and keeping Sheffield United out from that point onwards. It looked an even game, really, when you look at the chances created, shots on goal, XG, etc. But it's a big, big win for Sunderland. It gets them right back on the tail of the top three. Sheffield United are a strange one. You know, unlike Burnley, where I think they're doing enough, they might be okay, and I've not got many worries about Leeds. This is unusual from Sheffield United. You know, they had a brief 2-game blip earlier in the season where they lost to Boro and Leeds, which you can say is understandable, and they got back on the horse pretty quick after that. But they've now gone winless in 3. Looked a bit shaky at the back. I don't know how much of a dip this is for Sheffield United. I still think they're going to be right up there, and they've got more than enough. I'm not worried by them, you know, by any means whatsoever, but this wasn't great from them, and they need to get back on it pretty quickly because there are teams behind them who will be eyeing them up if they continue to go winless. So a strange runner from them at the moment. We'll keep an eye on that, but nevertheless, Christmas has come twice in the space of a week for Sunderland. So then, rounding off the league table then, Leeds, you could say no damage done really. I mean, you know, still 5 points is the gap to Sunderland, so I don't think they'll mind that all that much. I think they'll just be relieved that Burnley and Sheffield United didn't capitalise on their drop points at home. So Leeds, I think, will feel rather satisfied. Burnley have jumped into the top 2, so they can take that. But I'm sure they would have liked a win as well. Sheffield United, the big losers, you know, they went from being clear at the top down into third. It just shows how much one slight slip at the top can cost you. And Sunderland are obviously the ginormous winners in that charge, back within 2 of the top 2. And you could say Boro and West Brom, big winners in behind as well. Still a bit of a gap there to the top 4, I think, for Boro and West Brom at this moment in time. Unless the teams above them keep slipping, it's all about consolidating a place in the top 6 and getting a bit of a bridge between them and whoever is 7th. But I still think the teams chasing will be fine. They've still got a game in hand each. Blackburn still in a great position on 39 points. Watford falling away ever so slightly. You know, they've lost back-to-back games. Blackburn have failed to win in 4, so be interesting to see how them two react. You know, Sheffield Wednesday, another side who've dropped off a little bit, so a great chance for Boro and West Brom to kick on at this moment. When we go down towards the bottom, not grim reading or great reading for Plymouth. Despite their point, they remain 4 points from safety. Cardiff and Hull remain in the bottom 3. Pompey are back out of it with 2 crucial games in hand. Luton are the side I'm looking at a little bit concerned. They've got no games in hand on anybody, and the gap is now only 3 points. So they have a huge few games coming up. The next game against QPR could be absolutely ginormous for them. On the road again, not great for Luton. But look at Oxford, they've pulled themselves away. They're right up to 18th. And we've not really spoke about Derby being in a relegation scrap, and Oxford are right alongside them, so you could argue they've pulled themselves out of it to a degree. Gary Rowett's done a fantastic job there. But that's it for this week's roundup. Sorry it was a little bit late. I did get back from Hull very late. The other night, obviously, I was there. It was the late kickoff, so with me being back at work, the following day didn't really get to any content until quite late on. So, yeah, lots to do, lots to catch up on. So this is a day later than normal, but we will be back to round up whatever happens this weekend before we can finally take a breather with the FA Cup third round the weekend after that. But I'll be very intrigued to see what you guys think of your team in the comment section below, what you think of the fight at the top and the bottom. And as always, until the next one, if you've enjoyed the video, smash a like on the video, subscribe for more. We do round up every round of Championship games on the channel, and comment below with your thoughts. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.